Hello and welcome to Tea and a Chit Chat. My name is Russell, and today I am joined by Ben Maddox, who is a actor, teacher, board game connoisseur, and interviewer of many a folk. Drunk. Welcome to the show. Obviously, I've learned my lesson, and we're going before we get stuck into learning more about you and what you do. What I'd like to ask you is, what tea are you drinking there?
I am drinking, unfortunately, because I live in Berlin, you see.
Okay.
So it's hard to get
We forgive
tea.
you.
So I'm drinking PG Tips.
Snap!
Which is not my choice, though. I prefer Tetley.
Because I thought that was going to be like, I don't like mainstream teas. But, I mean, mainstream teas are fine. But you are more of a Tetley fan, so you don't mind the mainstream teas, just the brand is important to you.
You know, I've tried, those frou-frou teas that come in like vacuum sealed bags.
Yeah.
They're fragrant and they've got bergamot and fish eyeballs in them, and you drink them and you think, I've just paid 15 quid for 4 grams of this and it tastes like normal tea. No, bog standard tea. It's the only way to go.
Okay, no, you know what? You grow up on that though. Oh, and by the way, I should say to anyone watching, please feel free to ask any questions you have throughout the stream. Get involved in the chat. You can use Twitch, the platform, to chat. Just write your questions in. I'll be able to see them, and I'll make sure that we can ask them to Ben at the end, towards the end of the show. But also, we will like to hear your thoughts and opinions as we go throughout the show anyway. So please write down your questions and get involved. So
and if they're personal questions, I'm gonna lie. So it's great.
Yeah, you could get as personal
Ask
as
whatever
you want. Within reason. So yeah, please get involved in that. Okay, so Ben, so we've talked about you briefly at the beginning, but obviously you are, I would say, mostly known, and actually I follow your account for the 5 Games For Doomsday podcast. That's the right term? It is a podcast, right?
That's right.
I don't find it so funny because some people, they're very specific about sort of the terms they use, and that's totally fair. Like if people consider it something of a greater... It's
an audio happening, is what it is.
That's exactly the turn of phrase I'm curious about. That's pretty cool. Okay, so it's an audio happening. Please tell us more. How did that come to be? Tell us all about 5 Games For Doomsday and why anybody who is listening to this might want to check it out.
Well, firstly, before we go on, if I look a bit strange, partly I look strange. That's genetics. But I did one of those Twitter things where I went on Twitter and said, shall I grow a tash?
Oh.
And the vote came in, and the vote was actually closer than I thought, but it was a positive. So if you look, I've got the beginnings of a rather grey tash coming on. So if people are thinking, has he just eaten his dinner and not washed his mouth? No, it's the beginning of a tash.
Okay, well, there we go, answered.
Well, a question that wasn't even asked.
We love that. Well, it is tea and a chit chat. So, sorry, I'm interrupting. Carry on.
Exactly. Tea and a digression. This is me sober as well. Imagine me drunk.
We're keeping it family friendly for the time being.
Exactly. We'll do the after dark version, and I'll just put all the swear words
Please
in.
do. So yeah, 5 Games For Doomsday.
Yeah. So I've been board game podcasting now since I think about 2015-ish, I suppose, and I've had various shows. And what having these shows taught me is that I work appallingly with other people. So. And, it's one of those things. You end up having an argument with someone, you think, it's them. And after the 50th time it's happened, you go, maybe it's me. Probably not, but maybe. So...
Do you care to elaborate on that? Because that's quite interesting.
Well, my last podcast was just getting going and becoming quite popular, and people enjoyed it. And then this is I'll tell it shortly. I woke up one morning and I was locked out of the Twitter account. I was locked out of the email account. I was locked out of the website. And my partner had gone in the middle of the night, changed all of the passwords, and then put a piece up on the website saying, the podcast is over because Ben's a misogynist Nazi.
Wow. I mean... Do you remember what was this a surprise to you? Like, did you know about?
This was a huge surprise. And it's a long story, but anyway, that's the basic précis of the situation.
And yet we invited you on the show.
Indeed. If you look, my moustache goes all the way to here. It doesn't stop here, you see. So I, partly out of bloody mindedness, really, I thought, well, screw him. I'm going to prove that I'm not a misogynist Nazi by starting another podcast. And I just had this idea for a show. And it wasn't until, this is legitimately true. It wasn't until about 2 shows in, I thought, oh my God, this is Desert Island Discs. I just nicked Desert Island Discs.
Well, you've rethemed it, is what you've done.
That's what I've done. I'm like one of those Chinese publishers that takes Bang and rethemes it to an Hawaiian Island theme and then sells it. Is basically what I've done.
So that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about. So I mean, because we still haven't got to the grips of exactly what it is. So if anyone watching it is essentially you asking your guests, people you've chosen, I suppose, for specific reasons, to pick 5 of their favorite games that they would play for a forever amount of time, basically. Well, like an unknown amount of time.
Well, so the premise is basically, and which is quite ironic in the current situation, is there's been an apocalypse. You've had to flee to a cabin in the woods, and you can only take 5 of your games with you. Which 5 do you take? Because I kind of wanted to do, because watching the YouTubes, top 10 lists, top 5 lists, they're super popular, right? But I thought, I just don't want to do a top 5 list. I'll get people on, tell me the top 5 games. It's boring. I wanted to do something that set a challenge to the guests to think about what games mean to them. What is the purpose of a game? Are they a sentimental thing? Is it purely practicality? I mean, it's amazing the amount of people who choose Gloomhaven simply because they know they've got 5 years of Gloomhaven.
Yeah, exactly.
And so with all of that sort of thrown in, it promotes an interesting conversation about the nature of games, what they mean to certain people, and all of that sort of stuff. And so, then I get people on. We go through their lives. Yeah,
I noticed you do have it's very nicely crafted, I would say, in terms of the way that you present it. And I think that there's obviously high quality recording equipment used because your sound is awesome. But there's another reason for that. Yeah, we can see it in the thing. That is like, I mean, I would show you mine, but I'm a bit embarrassed to bring it out now.
I spent the money on this. God damn it! It's in everything I do.
I totally get that. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of curious. Like, and obviously you've interviewed. Like, do you remember? Have you got a number of how many people you've interviewed for this so far?
I counted it the other day because everyone does these sort of episode 50, blah 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 blah. And I realised, oh God, I don't know how many I've done. So I counted them, and I think I've done about 58.
Oh wow,
now.
that's not a small number. And you do it every.
No, so I missed the 50th show by simply not counting. But
you can go to the 100th though. That's something. That's a bigger number, like literally.
It is a bigger number. Mathematicians will tell you that, and they're not wrong.
So how do you pick a guest? Like, obviously there are quite well-known people. I mean, you had kind of big names like Rainer Knizia. We've had the artist behind Semi-Co-op, Raquel Kram, and so you pick a kind of a diverse group, but they're obviously involved in the gaming scene. How do you pick your guests?
So it's 2 criteria really. It's one of 2 criteria usually. So it's either A, are they a sort of big deal in the board game world? Is it Rainer Knizia? Is it, who else have I done who's big?
Not physically, I mean, like, obviously.
I mean, also. I do it based on body weight. I ask them what their body weight is. If it's under a certain thing, they don't come on. I've done loads of sort of big people. But, so it's either, are they really big in the board game world? Or do they have something, are they connected to the board game world, but they have something really interesting? So I interviewed, for instance, Stan Hughes, who does a lot of stuff, and he's a mental health nurse.
Okay, cool.
So it's super interesting so we spoke about not specifically his job, but sort of the changes in attitude he's seen towards mental health issues over over the 20 years he's been in that business, and that sort of stuff. And it's great. Sometimes you stumble on stuff because you say it's crafted. I mean, I do a lot of planning because I'm a very unoriginal, stupid human being, and if I don't do loads of planning, it would just be terrible, you see. And so, do you know Mark Herman?
I gotta say, the name doesn't ring a bell, but I might.
He's essentially the Scorsese or Kubrick of war games. So if you're not a war gamer, you might not know. But he's the best. He is the Knizia of war games, basically. And so I was interviewing him, and so I was writing out the show notes. And I did some research on him, and I brought up his LinkedIn page and saw where he'd worked and stuff. And I saw this one company. I thought, oh. So I clicked on the company, had a look, Googled the name of the company, and it turned out to be the company that Edward Snowden was working at when he stole all the information. And it turned out Mark had been his boss.
What?
Briefly. And so that's super interesting. And I was doing the interview, and I always send the guest the show beforehand, just so they can vet it.
Yeah.
To see, I'm not asking them, personal questions, but their love life and things. And so I had the section with Edward Snowden in, and I'm thinking, should I ask it him? He hasn't said anything, but I assume I'm going to get shut down straight away. And so I said, you briefly worked at this company, and you were briefly Edward Snowden's boss. What do you know anything about Edward Snowden that we don't? And then he did a big 10-minute monologue on how Edward Snowden's a traitor and he worked for the KGB for the last 20 years and all of this. It was absolutely fantastic. And what the show has really taught me is that everyone's interesting, essentially. Everyone's super fascinating. And if you just scratch slightly beneath the surface of, what game have you got coming out in the next year, you'll find something interesting about everything.
I think that goes naturally. I mean, it's kind of funny because this is actually the first time me as a very amateur sort of interviewer is interviewing an interviewer. So I was actually going to ask you for tips. But we can do that later, because one of the things I always mention is you said about the Snowden. It kind of feels like the 6 degrees of separation rule, but within the board game community. Like that's still a thing, which is kind of wild. But yeah, I mean, interviewing an interviewer. Actually, is there any questions you'd like me to ask you? That's.
Oh God, that's a really hard question, because I usually ask the questions. I don't usually answer them.
It's funny, while you're thinking of that, if you've not seen, just the people watching, if you've not seen my my chat with Jamie Stegmaier, he's the only person so far in this whole thing that's actually asked me your questions. I found that really sort of strange.
Oh, it's pretty awful. I interviewed Jamie as well, and he did the same to me.
He's such like a talker. Like he likes. I mean, he's quite. Right. He's quite sort of concise sometimes, I feel, like with his answers. Yes. Like I had to have a lot of questions in the bank, and actually the show ended up only being half an hour because he obviously is a busy man, and he was doing it on his lunch break because of the time difference. So I was like, I don't want to take up a whole hour. Yeah. So I ended up having to go through all of the questions that I'd written, and I just run out of time just because he answers the question and he's quite concise and he does it. So it's funny that you've interviewed him as well. Did you have the same sort of thoughts on that?
I did. He asked me questions, and I was completely affronted by that. I was like, how dare you? We've established roles here. So I just edited them all out of the show. And I went, you're not circumventing my format, bucko.
Have you had any, speaking of that, have you had any favourite people? I mean, you've spoken about Mark then. Obviously, the fact that he brought up this really sort of fascinating tirade about against Edward Snowden, and I don't know whether that constitutes a highlight, but have you had any favourite people?
It certainly is a highlight.
Have you had any favourite people on the show? I know you kind of mentioned a couple when we were chatting, but were they favourites?
I mean, there's a few people just because they are, Reiner Knizia was a big one because it's Reiner Knizia, and Richard Garfield was a big one too. And, the Richard Garfield one took sort of 3 months to arrange, and his personal assistant. Like I sent because most people I write the show out and I send it to them, and then when we get on Skype or whatever, I say, "Oh, did you manage to look through the show notes?" And they say, "Oh, yeah," and you know they're lying, you know they haven't. But Richard Garfield's assistant had gone through the every question that I'd written down. She sent me an email rewriting my show for me, suggesting how I should redo it. I mean, of course, I didn't take any notice. And she said to me, "You have 60 minutes,
like on the dot, and that's it.
If on the dot, if it goes over 1 minute, I'm going to come in and I'm going to shut the call down." And the problem is with my show is that it's 5 games for Doomsday, right? So I've got to get the 5 games in. So that was, and I had to stay up because he only had this one window of time, which meant I had to be awake at 4 a.m. Here. So it's super stressful, but super interesting.
He must be based in like America, but maybe because I've had chats with people and they've always generally been quite accommodating. But yeah, that's a tough cookie. Maybe you should interview the PA next time.
Yeah, I think what it is actually is that he's super lax, and he's got all of these things to do, and he's a bit sort of chill and a bit of a hippie. And the only reason he gets anything done is because his personal assistant, who also is his wife.
Maybe that's a good thing. Yeah, maybe he's really thankful for that.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what it is.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, and obviously, have you got any? Have you had any people in mind that you're like, oh, I'd love to interview them. I've tried, but I haven't got them yet.
Yes, there's a couple of people. So I haven't tried yet, but Christian Peterson, I think, would be a really interesting interview. He's the owner, ex-owner of Fantasy Flight and ex-manager of Asmodee North America. He left like a year and a half ago. I think he'd be super interesting. There's 2 that are really that it's sort of fantasy that I'm going to get them. One, just because I think it would do really well for the show, and that's Will Wheaton, of course, would be great. And then the second one, it would do really well for the show, but also because I think he's probably the premier satirist of the late 20th, early 21st century, and that's Trey Parker.
He's a board gamer as well, yeah.
Trey Parker's a big board gamer. Yeah, he had Tom Vassell over there and stuff. So I'd love to get Trey Parker on, because I think Trey Parker would be Trey Parker would be a great laugh too, because there's a lot of board game stuff that's all very family friendly and all very censored, and I made it very clear from the beginning that I wanted my show, that I wanted the guests to be able to say what they wanted, and I wanted the show to be adult entertainment, not sexy adult entertainment,
grown up,
grown up. Yeah, so there's naughty words, and we talk about transgressive things, because so much of board games can be. I think so much of board games has the old idea that it's a toy, therefore it's for kids, therefore it should all be very clean, and that's not my bag.
Well, and by the way, I should say Tony Boydell is watching. Thank you. He said that everything went downhill after he appeared on the show. I mean, can you corroborate that? That's true. I'm sorry, Tony. I'm sure you were a lovely guest. But as you know, Ben is notoriously difficult to work with.
He's an horrendous human being.
And I'll ask your question.
He's Welsh as well.
I am Welsh, in case anyone didn't know. But yeah, Ben did mention it earlier on, but he lost a bet. He made a vote, I should say, on about losing your beard. So now he's left just with the tash. So, but yeah, feel free to throw some more questions and we can ask them to him at the end of the show. So it's funny you mentioned Will Wheaton and Trey Parker, because I actually, obviously those are kind of big. Have you approached them yet? Or are they still kind of...
No, I haven't approached them yet, because it's just a matter of I've got people sort of... This sounds moronic, but it's true. I've got sort of people working on it, because you need to approach them through their management. So I'm going to go through their management. Problem is, I think Trey Parker's represented by William Morris, which is one of the
bigger angels,
biggest. Yeah. My first ever rejection as an actor, in fact, was the William Morris agency. I wrote to them to ask them to represent me as an actor.
I thought you meant that they had an acting job for you and you got rejected. Yeah, we'd like you to come and...
No. I wrote to them, asked them to represent me, and they wrote back a very form boilerplate letter saying "not a bloody chance."
Well, you know what? That's something that you might be able to what am I thinking of? Like, do so well. You
Bomb
get
their
that you might go to such a, I don't know what I'm talking about. what I'm saying is that you can go on, do your own thing, show them how amazing. You know that classic sort of reality show things. Well, I'll show you. You'll regret this. I'll show you.
Living well is
you
the
made
best
the
revenge.
wrong choice there. And then actually go and do that. The going and doing of that is the hardest thing. I wanted to ask you something about Trey Parker. The reason I mentioned him, but I thought if you ever did a podcast with him, it would be so surreal, like having to listen to his voice and not think of all the South Park characters that he voices, because that must be quite weird.
Well, hopefully he'd do it all in Cartman voice. That would be
but I heard that they alter the pitch and tone and stuff, so it wouldn't actually be able to recreate it himself. I think he's like,
oh, really?
I'm not 100%, but there's no way that one person can make all of those different voices. I think the kids' voices in particular are the ones in. I'm not 100% on that, by the way. I might be spreading horrible lies, but
well, if you watch South Park, he basically does two voices, doesn't he? He does the normal voice, and then he does that voice. That's it. Really.
Oh, it's a great question by Tony Boydale, but I am going to wait to the end of the show. We usually keep the questions till the end of the show, but that's a great one. I'm going to ask you that. So.
It's huge, Tony.
So you talked about acting. You are an actor. How much of your life does that take up? Is that your main career? Is it like a side gig? I'm just curious. Like, no, because I like to. I specifically want to keep this. Like, I don't want to do a ton of research on people when I do them. I've listened to your podcast, by the way, so that should already get me in your good books.
Well, absolutely. You and the other three people. So, what do I? So at the moment, absolutely none, because there's no acting being done at the moment.
Corona,
or the coronavirus. But it's interesting when people find out I'm an actor. They ask me one question inevitably, and the question is, so what kind of acting do you do?
Oh, I thought. I'm so sorry I've interrupted you, by the way. It's just like the one question I assumed did people ask you, what have you been in then? Is that not the question that people ask actors?
I don't get asked that. Maybe it's because I live in Germany. I don't know. But I don't get asked that very much. But what do you do? And the thing is, it's sort of like most actors don't get to choose. It's not like, I want to be a theatre actor. It's like, I want to make money, so I'll do anything that gets thrown my way. So being in Germany as an English-speaking actor, I mostly do voiceover stuff. So the last sort of 2 years, the money I've made from acting has been voiceover stuff like I did a internal video about how to drive a forklift into a pallet and pick it up correctly. Very exciting. I
have no idea where to start with that other than pressing go on the forklift.
Well, I didn't either. Luckily, they wrote the script for me, so because it would be really awful had I had to do it myself. So a lot of stuff like that. And I've been doing, and this sounds a lot more sort of gamey than it actually is, but corporate role plays. And so there's this company in Berlin, and what they do is they farm out actors. So these companies, they do like a week-long training session, and it's sort of negotiation. And then they hire this company who then hire me. And we go sort of all around Germany to like HR people and sales directors and this sort of stuff. And the premise is, so they don't know this is happening. They get shown to a room and there's a petrol can outside the room, and the person says, you're in Arizona, your car has broken down, you've walked 10 miles, you see this gas station in the middle of the desert, there's a closed sign, go in and get the gas. And they don't know that there's going to be an actor in the room. And then they come in and they've got to get the gas. And I'm supposed to throw loads of obstacles in there, basically. So a lot of that sort of stuff.
So, I mean, is that a new thing? I've never heard of that. I know about corporate team building stuff, but I've never heard of corporate role plays. That quite new.
God, I've no idea.
How long have you been doing it?
How long have I been doing it? 3 years now, I guess. So maybe it is a relatively new sort of idea. But, and it's great fun and it pays really well, but it's not very particularly artistic. And, and I've done lots of theatre work and all of that sort of stuff, and I've got a play scheduled for autumn, but
Yeah.
who knows whether that's going to happen?
Fingers crossed.
And even if, yeah, but even if it does, are people going to want to sit in the theatre next to each other? This is the thing. So we'll see. But yeah, acting's one of those things where it's either feast or famine. You've either got tons of work or nothing. And most actors have second jobs because it's an inevitability.
So, I mean, you are also a teacher, so that's presumably your second job. Are you still doing that? Okay.
Yeah, at the moment, virtually. So I work at a couple of universities in Germany. So you've got Berlin, and then you've got Brandenburg, which is the sort of county around Berlin, and I work at a couple of universities in Brandenburg.
Okay. And what do you teach? English. Okay, wonderful. You're speaking the right language for that.
Well, exactly. I tell you, if you're gonna be born a native speaker of anything, English, it's the correct time to do it because you can find work anywhere.
And virtually, obviously, we haven't really talked about it, but we have kind of brought it up as a subject in all of sort of our previous Tea and the Chit chats, and obviously the coronavirus is causing quite a lot of difficulty for some people and changing of how people do things. I mean, do you want to give maybe a brief sort of update on how that's impacted you? I mean, like, are you well? Are you doing okay despite this?
So, I like that you pulled a serious face. The Monday before the semester started, the Friday before the Monday of the semester starting, I got an email from my boss saying all classes are cancelled. And I'm a freelancer, right? And I was just like, oh God. And I, being a feckless idiot, I always live on the borderline of being homeless, right? So I'm like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. All of my work's cancelled. I'm screwed. Luckily, Germany is a wonderful country and they're super humane. And the university said, no, we can do it all online. So in terms of my work, it's been great. I've been able to do it online, so I haven't lost anything. And I decided that I would go into a sort of monastic retreat. So basically, I'm eating super healthy. I'm working out 6 times a week. I've given 1 day of the week over that I can drink alcohol 1 day a week, and I started running again. I used to run quite a bit, and I haven't been running for a while. I started running again, and it's great. And I'm going to run a half marathon on Friday.
Wow, I mean, I'm
super slow.
I was going to say presumably not like an actual half marathon. You're just going to do your own one, right? Because yeah.
Exactly.
Khalid Steele says, "What's up?" So,
Khalid.
Hello.
That's
Thanks
a hell of
for
a
watching.
surname.
So yeah, obviously, that you seem to be all right, making the most of it. Have you been playing any games in?
I live in a flat and I share it with other people. So
Cool.
Yes, and they're gamers, which
Good
is
stuff.
great. But the one thing, but the one thing, if you'll excuse me vulgarly plugging my show, is that I've been doing daily-ish short interviews with people in the industry talking about how coronavirus is going to affect the industry in general, how it's affecting them, that sort of stuff. So I've spoken with a doctor, I've spoken with a clinical psychologist, I've spoken with publishers, and I did a week on friendly local game store owners and how it's affecting them. Today's episode was a guy who runs a charity in Uganda.
Wow.
And he also runs a board game convention in Uganda. So I spoke to him about sort of the situation in Uganda and all of that sort of stuff. So basically, I've been keeping myself sane by
Has that been all on your website as well?
So it's all on the podcast feed. If you look for 5 Games for Doomsday on any podcatcher, then you will get all of those episodes. And, I spoke to Stephen Bonacore, Ignacy Trevicek, all of those sort of people just about...
Yeah, I mean...
coronavirus in the industry.
Oh yes, I think I have seen you post about them now. Now you recall. I was like, yes, actually, you're the guy doing those. So that's great.
That's right.
And have you found that useful? Like, I mean, obviously, it's a good way to keep yourself entertained, like occupied when you're sort of doing this. But have you found that's quite useful for you? Have you learned anything while doing these?
I mean, it's what's really interesting is I interviewed Max Davey. He's a doctor. You should approach him to come on. Actually, he's a super bright guy. He did the British Pediatric Council's study on children and screen time, whether screen time is dangerous for kids. TLDR, it's not. But I had him on, and he was talking about. Basically, I asked him a lot of questions about, so, you see on Facebook and it says, if you have this symptom, it's not corona. If you have this symptom, it is corona.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da. And he just said, don't listen to any of it. Don't listen to any of it. Nobody knows. It's all lies.
So because they don't know?
Any of the Facebook...
Because they just don't know yet?
Yeah.
I think obviously that... Yeah,
so
sorry. Keep interrupting.
Yeah, it's a combination of not knowing and also... Everyone's different. So some people might have coronavirus and a runny nose, right? It's conceivable. Some people might have a cold and coronavirus at the same time. So all of these ideas, it's just false information.
I think this...
And that was super
Well, I think there's obviously a big problem these days. I don't want to sort of get too political or whatever, but I think there's obviously a massive problem these days with misinformation. There's also an overload of information as well. And the sort of like for people who are following this, and this even goes... within our community, the board game community, it's really hard for one person to kind of discern what is real from what is not, and that's obviously difficult to deal with, and it's quite a burden actually, to have to use sort of like you have to keep track of everything. So actually, for people to sort of step away and kind of like back away from taking on that information and kind of come back to it later on. Staying away from news seems to be actually a better thing nowadays because you just don't know what's true and what's not.
Well, Dan Hughes gave me some great advice. He said, look at the news once a day because it doesn't change that much. And if you look at it every hour, you're just going to cause yourself anxiety. Look at it once a day.
Yeah, that's true.
And especially, Germany have been amazing. And they have these dates. So yesterday was the latest date for the reevaluation and are new things going to open and all of that sort of stuff. And so, you look at the news then and you see what the government have said, and then literally we're all adrift at sea in this situation. There's nothing we can do. So getting yourself het up and paranoid and not being able to sleep or drinking yourself to death every night isn't going to help. Chill.
Yeah.
Chill.
So we should sort of veer back towards some lighter topics, because obviously it's good to talk about these things. Like I'm not trying.
Let's talk about Jeff.
Obviously, don't want to shy away from these topics, but obviously being a little bit of a light-hearted show. I didn't mention actually, but I did tell you about it before the stream. But for anyone more interested, we're going to play a little game with Ben later on, which I've created specially for him. So, and it's a game that you can
strip Catan, I think.
Oh no, but that's for the late night show, remember? But later on, we will be doing a game, and you can play along with it at home. It's kind of fun, so stick around for that. We'll probably be about 10 minutes to get that. But I wanted to ask you about games in general. I know we talked briefly about. I asked you earlier on about just sort of like playing games, but have you been? I mean, we can go back before this whole coronavirus thing, but have you been playing any games lately that have excited you? Like you've been like, oh, that's a really good game. I wasn't expecting to like that.
So there's two. One's an old one that I discovered that I should have known, but I played it once sort of 3 years ago and then played it recently and was like, oh no, it is amazing. And then another one's a fairly new one. So the old one is Castles of Burgundy.
Yes.
Which is just so good. A lot of my game group are super heavy gamers. They're into the Laserders and the Splotters, and I will play them and I will enjoy them, but the mental taxation means that I get a bit frustrated. And there is something about these slightly older, very simple Euros that you kind of do one thing on your turn, and from that a whole tree of decisions explodes, and it takes you down many varied paths. That a part of the reason I love games is because I see them and I think I could never do this. How do you do this? How do you design this? And if Tony's watching, I think Tony's astonishing. I think his games are wonderful. and I'm constantly in awe of game designers. My brain just doesn't work that way, right? And Castle de Burgundy is so satisfying, and it doesn't take forever, and it's not needlessly complex, and it fires all of those neurons and makes you feel great after playing it, right? So is that brilliant. And then before Corona, I played Wavelength.
Oh yes,
Have you played Wavelength?
I played Wavelength.
So
fantastic.
Good. It's a really, really nice party game. It does that thing that party games should, which is promote laughter and antagonism, and have your partner should look at you as if to say, "Are you a moron? What the hell?" And all of that sort of stuff. And I was playing, and my partner was American, and I made an ironic statement. And of course, because he's American and they don't understand irony, he didn't understand I was being ironic. And we had this 10-minute argument about, you shouldn't be ironic. And I'm like, well...
Well, that's funny. It's great. I think that I keep saying this. I hope I don't oversay this statement, but I think any game that sort of uses subjectivity as a mechanic is a really clever thing, and it's just one of those kind of like, how did they come up with that idea? It's so incredible. And it's actually a good game. I knew from even when I'd never played it, because I saw it on Kickstarter, and even from just the description of the game, I knew that it was unique and it would work. I just knew it would work, and it's so hard for me to take a risk on a Kickstarter game, because I would much rather wait for a game to be released and have like a kind of an opinions kind of put out there and figure out if it is a game for me. But Wavelength was just like, for me, I have to back this game because it just ticks a box, and I knew it would work, and it did. So I really I like that. It's so good.
And usually so much plastic in games is pointless, whereas in Wavelength it really works, and it really adds to the game.
That's a very good point.
And talking about Jamie Stegmaier, and he was talking about one of the games he took was Zolkin, and I said, why Zolkin? And one of his answers was, I really loved how the gears moved, and they really add something to the game. They're componentry that adds something to the game rather than just being componentry. And then I asked him, so have you ever done that? Put components in games that really add, are just not componentry. And it took him about 5 minutes to think of something, because let's be frank, the components in Tapestry are pointless. They're
a abusification of the game, I feel like that game specifically was like almost like an experiment to see if it could be done, to create, because there's no denying the models look beautiful. They're nice. It's slightly frustrating, the fact that the footprints don't quite like do the job. Right. That is a legit criticism of the game, but I genuinely felt like that. Yes, I have. It? And again,
is it
I don't
terrible?
know. I don't think it's a terrible game. I think that the problem with Jamie, the problem that Jamie had was that there was a lot of hype behind that game, and I feel like that was based on having released some very good games up to that point. Nobody's going to sit there and argue that the games. Tony Boydell just said, by the way, Ian from Unpopular Mechanics is watching. Hello. And
hello, Ian.
Tony Boydell says, of course it could be done. Charge $99 for a $45 game and it Blooming works. Yes, but I almost feel like, and Fragor did the ridiculous components years ago. Do you know what? I don't know that game. Maybe that's an acronym. FRAGOR. I don't know that.
Fragor, they're a company, and they would publish these very small runs of games with absurd components. So at Essen one year they had ceramic gnomes was a component in the game, but they felt less cynical. They felt kind of more ad hoc, and they made it in their shed, and it felt like a sort of hobby thing. The thing I think what annoyed people about Tapestry is, firstly, Civ games are the best games. So if you make a Civ game, it better be amazing. Okay. And secondly, and it can't be light and airy and kind of pointless. And secondly, it just felt like those components were simply there to bring people to the game rather than to help.
I mean, like, I do take those criticisms upon, and I'm not like fighting for a specific opinion, because I only played it once, so it's very hard to take an accurate opinion on a game with kind of taking into all of its potential flaws and potential like positives from just one game playthrough. But the reason is because it's really hard to get hold of at the time. I know they sent out a certain number of copies, but regardless, I think that I still feel like it was almost like experimental, because I've not seen many games that do as good quality painted miniatures as that. And yes, it's possible like Fraggle did them before. I was just curious, maybe that was a legit criticism of the game. Like, they weren't necessary at all. You're right. You could do that whole game with like polyomino kind of style pieces instead of those buildings, and that's totally fine. But I feel like there is kind of, it's okay to have a sort of luxury department in gaming, and I sort of kind of categorize Tapestry in the sense that it was a luxury version, and down the road maybe they'll release a regular edition which is cheaper.
I think there's this feeling, right, that if you're gonna have a luxury game, it shouldn't just be luxury in its componentry, right? It should be deep, and it should be heavy, and it should take a long time. This is why no one throws up their arms at the Lacerda games, right? Because the Lacerda games cost more. But they're big, heavy, complex Euro games that take hours to play. So people think I'm getting my money's worth, right? Whereas Tapestry, I haven't played it, so I can't speak to the gameplay. But what people have told me is that it's quite slight, it's quite light, it doesn't take very long, and people don't want to pay £100 for a hour. I think
that's the core of the issue. Is, I mean, it's billed as a Civ game, but it doesn't feel like a Civ game. It feels like a sort of an like an engine builder essentially. But yeah, anyway, we'll cut that sort of discussion there, because obviously it feels like there was taking quite a large chunk of this. And then we've got the game to get through. So
but if you just quickly, if you look what he did with Wingspan on a limited budget, I mean, it's incredible, right? It's cheap. That game is cheap. It's beautiful. It functions. It wins everything. I think people want to slag people off, and I kind of understand that, I guess. But Wingspan was a real success, and they can't all be hits, right?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think that's very important, isn't it, to know that like people are going to make mistakes, and as long as people are making good points about why they're good, why they're bad, and people can learn from them. And I believe at least Jamie Stegmaier will have taken on board what people have been saying about that. That's my take on him anyway. Yeah. Anyway, so just a quick point. They were saying about in the chat, they're talking about board games becoming less wasteful, and I think that's also a legitimate point,
sure.
And I think is very important. We should be aiming to do that. But it's also hard to make that argument for what is essentially this hobby, because obviously you could argue, are board games obviously necessary? And we would probably argue they are, but we could always make less games. Do you know what I mean? But yeah,
reason not the need. And this might sound blasé, and of course we can improve, and everything can improve anywhere. But if you compare board games to the meat industry, the aviation industry, it's a very small drop in a very large ocean. So I understand the need to self-flagellate, but don't whip yourself so hard.
Anyway, that was quite a good discussion actually. But it does mean we have to go on to the more light-hearted part of it. As you know, Chits and Giggles has two parts. You've got the chits, you've got the giggles, and now it's time for the giggles. So I've created a game for you and everyone who is watching to take part in at home, and you'll hopefully enjoy the name of this game. I've actually called it 5 Games For. So
nice.
You can see where I've gone with this. So 5 Games For. The way this game works is I'm going to give you 5 different categories. Now, it's your job to come up with 5 games that fit the category that I'm about to give you. Okay? So this will kind of test you and the people watching's games knowledge. Now, it's going to get harder. I've tried to structure it so the first one should be the easiest. Then the second is going to be harder. And all we're looking for is to see how many of the 5 categories you can get right.
So when I fail on the first one, it's going to be a real flop.
But you might find your skills in one specific category better than others. And anyway, like I said, it doesn't matter if you win or lose. There's no thing. It's just to see how many of these you can get. But I would say a good score is like 3 out of 5. So how about you aim for that?
Okay. Now you put the pressure on.
Okay, so the first one, and I'm going to give you like a minute to answer each one. After a minute, I'm just going to cut out. Tony Borrell, by the way, is very excited for this game. So, okay, remember you can play along at home. You don't have to type it in, or you can if you want. But obviously, just if you come up with 5.
And just to say to the watchers, listeners, I'm not looking at the chat, so you can type whatever you want. I can't see.
Okay, great. So you can play along, chat as much as you want. All right. So the first one is, and you might find this a bit surprising or completely not, 5 games for Doomsday. So we're looking for games that have a post-apocalyptic theme to them. And I will consider like kind of other ones as well, as long as they fit this sort of like Doomsday theme. So just any 5 games with a Doomsday theme. Go.
All right. Outlive.
Okay. I'm going to have to look this up.
City of Horror.
Okay.
City of Horror. I'm looking at my thing. What's that one? That delivery one.
Oh, I know the one.
It's all
right. It's all right. You've got time. You're stressing. You're 2 already. That's good.
So patronising.
Well, if you think about the theme of the last one you said, there's lots of games that you could like bounce off of that one. If you think about the...
Oh, for sure. There's
There
zombies.
you go. There's number 3.
There's Zombicide. Oh, this is cheating.
Really good in the chat, by the way. Some good answers in there.
And let me think. I'm trying to think of one
Come on.
more.
You can do this. I'm going to leave...
Oh, my brain is completely stopped. I'm never going on.
Do you want a hint? I can't really give you a hint for this one, unfortunately, but... All right, what will you do?
I'm gonna go for Asgard by What's Your Game, and it's a game that is set in what's it called? What's the Nordic apocalypse?
Vanaheim? No, that's hell, isn't it? Valhalla.
Valhalla is where they live. It's the one.
I'm going to. It does mean about fallen warriors. I don't know if that's post-apocalyptic per se, but if you're saying it is, I'm just going to give you that one because.
It deals with. I can't remember.
I'm looking
what's
at
the Nordic
actually.
term?
Oh wait, but does chat know? Chat might know this. No, chat doesn't. Chat isn't. Chat. Blood Rage.
Blood Rage.
All right.
Blood Rage deals with.
Okay.
That works.
I don't know 100%, but we'll count that because it is meant to be a nice one. So we'll give you that one. You were pretty much almost there.
Was
but
tenuous.
it was just quite tough, actually. I didn't realise it would be quite struggling. It's the pressure of it, though, isn't it? It's the pressure.
It is the pressure. Well, it's your beady eyes
sorry.
on me.
Maybe I close my eyes. I'll shut the camera off when I want to do that. All right, so let's do the second one. We'll give you that 1 point. So the next one is 5 games for Uwe Rosenberg fans. And this is games by him. I don't want games that are like, oh, you like this if you like Ewan Rosenberg games.
Oh, it's easy. Midweight Euros, no problem. Glass Road, Cottage Garden, Le Havre, Agricola, and I'll just look at my games collection over here.
I won't give you that. That's not cheating, really, is it? I can't stop you looking at it.
No, you can't.
One missing.
Oh, Feast for Odin.
Feast for Odin, brilliant. Well done. So that was actually way easier. So you got that point very, very well. So yeah.
Midweight Euros are my jam, so especially
Chat was good. Tony Boydell is on it. He is flawlessly answering these questions so far. I hope you're enjoying it, by the way. All right, so we're on to number 3. I feel like this one is harder because I feel like there's less options, but then I think maybe not compared to Uwe Rosenberg because he just has more known games, I'd say. So 5 games for animal lovers, and I'm going to count only games that have animals as a main sort of part of the gameplay or heavily themed around.
Fast slots.
Yeah.
I got this in the post today. Hang on.
Oh, it's bold, spending some of his time going off screen to grab it. Endangered.
Endangered.
Yes. Good choice. Okay, so we got 2.
What's that? You've got.
Yeah,
Zularetto.
That's good. That's very, very animal themed.
What's the other one? What's the one with the pandas? Oh my god, what's it called?
Zularetto? There's pandas in that, right?
No. Zularetto just said the pandas.
Oh, I know what...
Were your feet the bamboo.
I think I know what you mean, but... Yeah, no, that would count if you got it. Wingspan, yes. Wingspan.
And you might not know this because I think it was only released in Germany, but Peep Mats.
That's the butterfly one, is it? No?
No, that's a little card game about birds.
Okay, Pete Metz. No, I do know that one.
And
That does count.
And it's wonderful.
That does count. So
recommend
yes,
it.
you did that one. So you had 3. You've got the score that I asked you to beat. So that's awesome.
Boom.
Now you're just playing for pride, and to hopefully get a full score. But I think these 2 next ones are harder. But we'll see. We'll see.
Okay.
So number 4 is 5 games for people who play as the color orange. So we're looking for games where you play as orange.
I don't play orange.
Well,
how am I supposed
maybe
to
you
know
won't
this?
get this one, but I'm going to give you a minute. All right, go. I'm going to use my phone to time this one.
Right, there's got to be like a war game set in the Troubles in Northern Ireland, isn't there?
Potentially. I can't answer that definitively.
Okay, so
Ian, that's not true. Orange is the best player color. That's the one I play. I don't really care, but
so March of Progress, the new game from Surprise Stare, where you play as Holland.
Okay.
Boom.
I'm going to take that one. I don't even know for sure, but we'll check that later.
You can ask Tony.
Yeah, Tony will be able to back me up.
God, play as
It's a
orange.
tough one.
I am going to fail. This
I'm
is
giving
really
you-
hard. Is this your colour?
It's not really. I mean, if I was to choose, I would, but I really don't care about player color. I'll just play as anything just to stop arguments. But yeah, come on. You might not be able to get this. This is going to be a tough one, but I figured, it's going to get harder. Otherwise, it's not challenging.
God, orange.
It is.
So hard.
It is. I could even give you it if you get 3 of these, to be fair.
Not a chance. Oh god.
This is the best thing about Board Game Geek, because they have like great geek lists where they just list a bunch of them.
Vast.
Vast.
You can play as
The
orange.
cats are
Vast.
orange. Yes, I'll give you that one.
Oh,
Oh,
whatchamafladget? Root.
is he not just? Oh no, I thought you said Root. Sorry, Vast. I don't know if orange is in Vast. I'm gonna assume.
Yeah,
But
it's in the
Root
mysterious
definitely
manner.
does that. I feel like I just gave you that one.
Root. You did. You just completely gave me that one.
Oh, your time's up, I'm afraid. Did you hear that? That's my phone alarm.
That's really
Yeah.
hard. Orange is
It was
really
tough, and to be
hard.
honest, I only barely know 5 myself. That's why.
Come on, then.
I'm not going to list them all now because I came up with them earlier on. I can't remember them, but I know that like games with orange player pieces are not the same. So I was thinking earlier on, I was like, oh, Lords of Waterdeep, and I was like, no, actually, you just get orange cubes in that. You don't actually play as orange.
Yeah.
But there are games. A lot of those Euro games tend to have those. There's not Maracaibo, Expedition to Newdale, for example, that has orange playing pieces in them.
I think
Does
Boss
Agricola
you can
have
play as
orange or not? No, it doesn't. Or is it?
God, I don't think so. I think it has.
But
just
anyway, it's a
normal
really
colour.
tough one, and I had, so I really didn't think anyone would get that, but I was like, it's got to be a challenge. All right, so let's see if you can get the last one, because this one I feel like might be more guessable, even if you don't get the right one. So
Okay.
now, and I have to double check these, because there are a lot of them, but I'm looking for 5 games for fans of games in the top 1,000 on Board Game Geek, but not in the top 100.
Oh, that's really nice.
It's very horrible. All right, so starting now.
I reckon, in honor of Tony, I reckon Snowdonia is in the top
But
1,000.
not in the top 100. All right. I'm going to
not
check.
in the top 100.
I have to check all of these. So yeah, I'm going to write them down. Okay.
I think Guilds of London, also by Tony.
He's just going to list
in that.
all of his games.
Tony's games. I reckon Brewcrafters.
All right, let's have a check that. I have to check all of these.
I reckon Las Vegas.
Las Vegas, the dice game. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm checking that as well.
And I reckon
That's correct. Las Vegas is. Well done, that's one.
Let's go for Indonesia.
Okay, I'm going to put pause on that. So you said Snowdonia. That is also in the top 1,000, not in the 100. One Indonesia. I'm going to check Indonesia quickly. I'm going to have to check this. I'm so sorry. This must be really frustrating to watch. This is very exciting. But
I'll sing it. I'll sing a song.
Please, vamp while I check these.
Now the end is near.
I was just reading some of the comments. Like, yeah, there's... okay, so Indonesia is... Yes, it is. It's just that... It's actually 210 overall. So that one counts.
That's
Well done.
a crime.
And we need to check Guild of London. sorry about this, but got to make sure the game is legit, otherwise it doesn't count. But you might have done this.
Exactly.
Actually, you might have nailed this if this comes up. Let's have a look. Guilds of London, no. Guilds of London is outside, so I'm going to put the timer back on. So you need to come up with at least one more. One more at least, depending on how Brewcrafters comes out.
Let's go with Luna.
Okay, I'm pausing. All right. Okay, Brewcrafters is, and you said Luna. Is that spelt like the moon, right?
Luna.
Oh, Luna. Okay, I put Loon R. All right, come on, guys. Can you do it? Well, has he done it? You've got 8 seconds left. Technically, you could be thinking this whole time anyway. But Luna. Yeah, Luna is it. So congratulations, you did it. Did you find that difficult? Was that a good one?
That one was great, with the caveat of not being in the top 100. So what you do, my thought process was, okay, think of a game designer and think of their games that are not super well. It's not the games about them that they talk a lot. And then I reckon, so pretty much anything by Stefan Feld, I reckon, is going to be in the top 1,000. But there's going to be a number that are in the top 100, right?
Well,
so La Isla, Luna, In the Name of the Dragon, that sort of stuff.
It's hard to argue with that strategy because it obviously very much worked. So congratulations, you got 4 out of 5. I'm going to have to just leave it.
And that orange question is
devilish. That one should have probably been number 5, come to think of it. But you know what? It was only a game I came up with today. So anyway,
incredible.
So you'll have to score yourselves at home. I can't unfortunately check all of those games. But if you enjoyed that games, the rule is, Tony Boydell says, I think older games as almost everything Cult of the New leaps into the 100. Tony won. Did you get 5 out of 5? I'm sure that is true because you are a knowledgeable man. But yeah, if you did, congratulations.
With years knowledge accrues. This is
it's basically cheating, isn't it? Like spending long time actually playing and knowing all about games. I mean, if you're going to do that, then of course you're going to get all of those time. Yeah. I'm an excellent quizzer, ... and liar. Okay, so actually now it's time to go on to the viewer questions. And actually, if you do have any, quickly write some down because I'm going to try and answer some. But I've got a question for you, and it was a very good one that was asked earlier on. Tony asks, Disney pumped an amusement park ride for a fortune in movie dollars. What board game should get the movie treatment? In your opinion, obviously.
It was said, I think, years ago by Quinns from Shut Up and Sit Down, and it's correct. And he said it's the best zombie game, and it's probably the best zombie game there'll ever be. And I think it's true. Do you want to try and guess which one?
I'm really not a fan of the zombie genre. I would say the only one I know is kind of a spoiler. I don't want to say that game in case people haven't played it. But there is a big zombie game. I mean, that would be cool. It's got a sort of narrative to it.
Talking about. Yeah, that's a huge
I'm
spoiler.
not going to say it.
Don't say it.
But no, I would. I mean, Zombicide people love, but certain ones. But I'm not really a fan myself.
No, it's City of Horror.
Okay, the one you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, City of Horror is amazing. So the premise is basically it's midnight, and it's in this city that's being rampaged by zombies, and you've got to survive until 4 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
When the choppers come in and take you away, right? And by 4 o'clock, you have got to survive and also have an antidote.
Okay.
And if you don't, you don't survive. And it does that thing that great zombie movies do. Zombies are never the protagonist. Zombies are always
the enemy.
Zombies are not dangerous until human folly makes them dangerous, right? And the beauty about City of Horror is it's essentially a negotiation game where you've got to sort of survive and sacrifice and stab people in the back. And as a sort of, you can imagine the movie and you've got to midnight. And you just see people's relationships gradually disintegrate as it gets close to the 4 o'clock. And the rampant id of all of the people dying to survive coming to the fore. And, City of Horror is wonderful. It's a game where you can throw an old man in a Zimmer frame to the zombies to save everybody else. You can kick a kid off a church tower to save everybody else. It's a brilliant game.
Those things are some of my favorite things in movies. Those things you just listed. So that's awesome. Maybe I will check this game out.
Oh, it's so good. It is the best zombie game.
It's competitive or cooperative?
I
figured as much, but it's just very unusual to find a competitive zombie game.
Yeah, and it's nasty. Wow. It's nasty. Brilliant.
Well, I mean,
Brilliant.
That's great. Actually, we actually come up to the end of the time, unfortunately. But listen, thank you so much for being a guest. I'm going to let you do a plug now. So if you'd like anyone who's watching, who watches this to find your stuff, how would they do that?
So you can search on all the podcatchers, 5 Games for Doomsday. You could also go to the website, 5gamesfordoomsday.com, at 5 Games for Doomsday on Twitter. And yeah, go discover the stuff, tell all your friends, get on the Patreon. Give me
I know
all the
that
cash.
you I know, oh yeah, because you're on Patreon as well. I was just gonna, at the end of your podcast that I listened to, you were very say if you loved the show, if you have nice to say, get in touch. If you have anything horrible to say, get in touch. And I was like, yeah, that's good. I think I would adopt that policy right now as well. If you have anything horrible to say about my shows, please get in touch. And the same if you have anything nice to say as well.
And the more horrible,
the more creative, though. I don't want any just like kind of bog standard insult, please. Also, I should plug my own stuff. Exactly. Actually, next episode is on Friday. I'll be interviewing Emma. It's funny because I never remember her surname, but she's known as Emma on Twitter. She does the Pointless Parrot podcast. She's a lovely human being. I can't wait to chat with her and talk all about her sort of like unique brand of zaniness. And of course, if you aren't following me on Twitch, please do. If you exit full screen, I don't know if you can do it in screen, but I have a follow button up there somewhere, so if you could click that, and you can be notified when I go live. And I'm so close to reaching my followers. I've got like 2 to go, so please do. And if you want to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, you see my your show activates my fight or flight response. Thank you, that's very, very kind. And also I'm on Patreon as well. You can see it down there, and Twitter and Instagram. But listen,
give him all the money.
Tony Boydell is now following. Thank you so much, that's very kind.
I mean, look at it. Look at the squalor in which he lives. He clearly needs all the cash you can give him.
No, I'm sharing.
Lovely flat, by the way.
You're not the first person to say that. I have to agree. I love my flat. It took a long time to find it.
We're
in London.
Do you still live in
I'm in London. This is so.
You live in that flat?
I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about how I get my money. No, I'm joking.
What do you do?
I'm very fortunate to live with a lot of people in a nice big flat that it just happens to be reasonable. Anyway, that's a very weird topic to under. But thank
Tell
you.
us the secret.
Off camera, I will. Listen, thank you so much. You've been a really lovely guest.
It's drugs, isn't it?
Like, if you are watching, you know where we are. Please tune in to us on Friday at 6 p.m. Thank you so much, Ben. That's the end of the stream. Yeah. Thank you so much, and we'll hopefully see you on the next one. Take care. Bye.